Get ready to get lawyered. We're talking about the Survivor Drown City cards from Arkham Horror, the card game. I'm Brandon.
I'm Steven.
I'm Kyle.
And you're disappointed in me, aren't you?
Yeah, that was horrible. But yeah, today I'm going to be leading us through my favorite class, Survivor.
Is it also your favorite show?
It is.
It's my favorite.
Not my favorite show.
I'm a huge Survivor.
I've actually never watched any Survivor, which is crazy
missing
because
out.
it's like it's game theory-ish, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you like Blood on the Clock Tower, you would enjoy Survivor. It's not the same game by any means, but
No.
it is another social
deduction.
manipulating each other like thing, and it's...
I've seen Big Brother and I was like, ugh, these people are so trashy.
Yeah, that's understandable. Big Brother's a terrible show.
Yeah, it's like I couldn't deal with it.
I think that the game in Big Brother is interesting, but the
Yeah.
show is
The
trash.
show is trash.
That said, I watch it.
great.
But I do not recommend it. I will wholeheartedly recommend Survivor and tell you don't bother with Big Brother. Yeah. But hey, sometimes you need something to watch on your iPad on the bike, you know?
It's so true.
Yeah.
All right, so let me just jump right in. Let's talk about the Survivor investigator, who I'm going to let you guys talk about him first, and then I'm going to tell you why you're wrong about his skill level. But let me start off with George Barnaby, the lawyer. He is a I have to read...
His flavor text, of
flavor
course.
text.
Yes.
Keep it consistent.
You got to know the story to really be able to grok anything else.
Yeah, otherwise it's just symbols on a card. I can't even read it.
Yeah, it doesn't even
Anyway,
make
George
sense.
Barnaby, the lawyer, after spending a month in jail at the age of 19, George Barnaby felt compelled to become a lawyer. He found great success and notoriety in his career, and as retirement approached, he made plans to sail around the world with his wife, Maria. Anyway, on the eve of his retirement, however, his home was attacked and Maria was murdered by cultists. I didn't read this beforehand. This is wild.
I like that we're reading these for the first time on camera. Actually.
Yeah, I'm like, holy crap! I'm even more compelled to play it now. Now, with a lifetime of wealth and contacts at his back, George has tracked the culprits to the city of Arkham, vowing to bring them to justice for their hideous crime. All right, now how do you feel about George?
Here's why his flavor text sucks.
I'll tell you why you're wrong.
Murdered by cultists is like not a rare thing in this universe.
Yeah, and also like the most generic crime that can happen in this city.
And it's missing any sort of flavor to
Of
that.
why?
Cultists of what? Murdered how? Anything to make that different from what has happened thousands of times in Arkham and in gameplay and in story.
Yeah, I feel like they should have stayed on the he was wrongfully jailed at 19, and that's why he was like, I need to be part of the system that can help make this better.
That's the more interesting
That
part
was
of the story.
I was super compelled. I was like, holy shit, he's like an old man. So I was like, he's age 19, he's arrested and put in jail. Crazy.
Oh man. Well, so tell us how his convict experience, lawyer experience, and vendetta for his wife translates into game mechanics.
Seamlessly, may I add. Let's talk about his deck building.
Okay.
So I'm already on that side. He has a deck size of 35, which makes sense now that I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Survivor cards 0 to 5, neutral cards 0 to 5, up to 10 other level 0 Seeker or Rogue cards. It's a pretty wide deck build. You can get some good cards in there. He has 3 copies of his signature, good thing, and then Cast Adrift, which is his signature bad thing.
Card was the word you were looking for. Signature card.
Got it. Well, he has signatures. They're, a bad one and a good one. So his signature weakness, and then a random basic weakness. Additional setup, after drawing your opening hand, you may place any number of cards in your hand face down beneath George.
I choose all of them. Easy.
Okay. Well, let's figure out why we might want to do that. For George, his stat line is 2 willpower, kind of low. 4 intellect, great for Survivor. 3 combat, 3 agility. He's civic and drifter traded. All right, here's where the meat comes. Your max hand size is equal to the number of face-down cards beneath George Barnaby. Limit 5 cards. You may commit face-down cards beneath George Barnaby to skill tests as if they were in your hand. Reaction. After you discard a card from your hand, place it face down beneath George Barnaby. then draw 1 card, limit once per phase.
Yeah.
Elder Sign effect, +1, and draw a card.
Yeah.
Alright, tell me about them. What do you guys think?
And just to be clear, when you discard a card after it resolves, it's not discarding from your hand.
Correct.
It's discarding from like the resolution area.
Yeah. It's from play. It's discarded from play. Like, so if you're committing a skill test to a skill, if you're playing an event, if you're...
Yeah, so none of those things trigger.
None of those trigger his ability.
Right.
Correct.
So yeah, as I was alluding to, this has nothing to do with his character or his story or anything. Like, it's a complete whiff on sort of marrying mechanics and flavor.
Yeah.
I think. Like, what does this have to do with any of that?
No clue.
And to be honest, I don't know what it would have to do with anything at all. Like,
I think like short-term memory loss would have been a cool angle.
That is good. I feel like usually Arkham puts these very kind of convoluted, but also sort of devoid of flavor things on musicians. So he also could have just been like, he's a guitarist.
Yeah,
you know?
of course. We already have Ashcan. He's the guitarist.
Yeah, this is him weaving a melody. You know,
Maybe the flavor is that like discarding is very wasteful, and lawyers are the ones who benefit from wasteful processes. So he's like charging hourly for the discards and making a lot of profit off of it.
I'm sold. I'm back in. That's good. Yeah.
Sorry, Jordan. Oh man.
Yeah, I think he's interesting. I think it's cool to have an investigator that ties into survivors liking to discard cards for effects, or get cards into their discard pile so that they can play them from there, or count how many there are, or whatever. They do a ton of those things. I just wonder if his hand size limitation, which is intense, is like worth it for any of that. It's because assuming that you want to play some of the cards under him, or commit some of the cards under him, sometimes that's a big part of the value that he's generating. I would say that your maximum hand size is going to be an average of like 3.
Or is his maximum hand size 10? Because at his biggest, there are 10 cards you can commit to a skill test. So arguably he has like the biggest hand size.
Interesting. Until and then he draws his weakness, which you haven't read yet, but which drops that from 10 to 0 and everything's gone.
So there's like a lot of nuance in this ability, right? Because it's once per phase an ability of a reaction where you discard a card from hand and then draw a card. That's crazy amount of cycling in as far as like your 35 card deck, which is like not impossible to get through, I feel like once or twice in this guy. Upkeep is also a really interesting thing because his hand size is actually kind of like one higher than it seems, because if he has 3 cards tucked under him, he has 4 cards in hand.
Like going into a new round.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to discard down the hand size, which is 3, then you proc the ability during upkeep, another phase, and then draw back to a 4th card.
That's true. Yeah. Discarding to his hand size limit does trigger his ability.
So it's like
interesting.
It's very interesting because we have the upkeep and the investigation phase where he's probably going to get 2 card draws out of his ability, as well as maybe tucking things under him and changing just the state. It's just like super, super flexible. He's one of those investigators, kind of similar to, I cannot remember her name for the life of me, Winifred, where it's like, I feel like if you get like some momentum behind you, you're going to be like rolling and you're going to be great. And then once you hit that weakness that I'll talk about in a second, it can really derail you, and it could take you maybe a round or 2 to get back rolling.
Right. Yep. You're going to be taking some basic card draw actions after that weakness hits. You want to give us his next 2 cards so we can talk about that fully?
Yep. So Grim Resolve is an interesting card. I don't think it's like the best thing ever, but it is his signature, which he has 3 copies of. It's a skill card that has a single wild printed on it. It's innate, developed, traded, his deck only. After the skill test resolves, you may swap any number of cards beneath George Barnaby with the same number of non-weakness cards in your hand. So one thing to consider is this could be one of those cards that's under him and gets, committed.
Yeah.
And so like that's a nice solid wild, and then you can shuffle around your hand and the tucked cards. That being said, I don't think it's an amazing signature. I don't think it's like game breaking. It doesn't do anything other than play with his national mechanics.
Yeah, I mean what it does is it kind of doubles down, or it like supports. I don't know what word I'm looking for there, but anyway, it ties into what Steven was saying. Is like you can kind of think of him as having a 10 card hand size sometimes. This actually lets you swap and take those cards that are under him just for their icons and skill card effects for their skill cards, but and think of them as if they are in your hand. Like, okay, that it's fine for me to let that asset go for now. I don't need it soon.
Yep.
And go under there because I can play the signature and get it back later.
Yeah, it's a good point. The other thing that you kind of have to consider with him, I lost this train of thought. I think I'm just going to move on to his Cast Adrift.
Let us know in the comments what Kai wanted to say.
I actually remembered now. The only thing that I like when I was first reading kind of his general play style and looking at the cards that he might be taking is there is this mechanic where he wants to discard cards to the discard pile, but they're usually 0 icon cards that don't necessarily want to come tucked under him. Like there are so many of those like improvised cards that have just no icons on them, and or cards that can only be played from discard that don't have icons on them.
That was one of the I think he was one of the first 2 investigators that were in like the preview article from the box, like him and Agatha, something like that. And that was one thing that, because we also didn't have the context of, there are a lot of cards in this box that play with discarding, especially in Survivor, so that's good to see. But yeah, going down the cards that do interact with discarding, there were a lot that don't actually work with him. Like you described the improvised things, Moonstone, and isn't there another card that's like Moonstone that it's like you discard it to play it? Or is it, maybe it's just Moonstone?
Yeah, no, I think there is.
But like that also doesn't work because if you're discarding it and playing it, you can't also put it under.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So yeah, there's a lot of what you think of as like Survivor's discard theme. It doesn't actually work.
Yeah, so it's like almost if you're playing those improvised cards, which I still think is probably a decent, pick in him who's going to be discarding cards pretty left and right.
Does he?
You have to be discarding a little bit more cards because you also want one to get tucked under him and draw.
Does he have to? How is his ability templated again?
It's a reaction.
Does he have to tuck it underneath him to get the card draw, or would he get a card draw when he discards and opts not to put it underneath him?
No, you have to put it under him to get the card draw.
All right.
Yep.
So yeah.
So you're having to discard 2 cards during your investigation phase in order to get the, one goes to your discard, one goes under you, you get a card draw. All right, and then finally, as we've been alluding to, Cast Adrift is this hardship weakness, which is just a brutal weakness. If there are no cards beneath George, you shuffle this back into your deck, so it's not going to whiff. It's not whiffing. Otherwise, discard each card beneath George Barnaby. And man, can you imagine the upkeep when you have 5 cards tucked under him?
Yeah.
You draw this blindly in upkeep, and then all of a sudden, you immediately discard everything, and your hand size is 0?
Yep.
That's brutal.
Even if you then, when you discard to hand size, trigger his ability, like you were saying for a card draw. Oh no, then
No, you get then 1.
That's true. You would have 1. Okay.
But you're also drawing a card.
You would tuck 1.
Yeah, tuck 1 and draw another one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
man,
Diana also has like a similar thing, and she displays deny existence to cancel her weakness. But like, is there an obvious way to cancel this one? Or
I don't think so.
Not to my knowledge. Yeah, I know.
No.
That's kind of what I was looking for too, because Diana is like the classic, like I tuck cards under me and then something could just wipe my whole board or kill me, and I have a perfect solution to that, and he just really doesn't. So it's going to be one of those things where I feel like you play him and you kind of feel out how fast he can get back up to tempo. Because I think it's pretty fast. It just does seem like if he's discarding and drawing, the discards are feeding his hand size, the drawing is going to get him back up.
I've always not liked that about Diana, though. I feel
it's
like
you're too easy.
Your weakness should be something you have to play around, not cancel. Like, right. So I'm glad that he can't cancel this. I do think it's harsh, and I do think it could have been something that goes into play until he spends an action or 2 to clear it, and that limits him to 3 cards under him. It's like it's a little less harsh, right?
A little less than just devastate your board state, move on with your life.
Yeah, and if you draw this in the late game when time is tight or there's enemies on you or whatever, it can be catastrophic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it might be the kind of thing where you just keep to like 3 under him until you've seen it, and almost a third of the time you're going to hit it with short supply. And so you'll know, okay, this is a game where it's safe to go up to 5, And then other games, you're
About
like, I'm going to stay.
35 card deck plus
That's why I said
4
almost a third of the
signatures.
time. So like a quarter of the time,
There you
you're
go.
going to hit it with short supply. And the
Oh,
rest of the
man.
time, you probably stick to like 3 under him until you've seen it.
Yeah, probably.
On the bright side, he synergizes great with wait, is it paranoia or amnesia? What's the core set discard your hand weakness?
Oh, yeah.
Oh god, yeah.
Synergize
Synergize is great.
I think it's amnesia.
I think it's
paranoia.
amnesia.
I think it's resources.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, totally could have been like the lead from Memento when we're talking about George. That would have been
Yeah.
great backstory.
Agreed.
Agreed. Like he can remember his wife getting murdered. We can even keep the wife murdered.
Yeah.
He remembers his wife
Yeah.
getting murdered, and that's the last thing he remembers.
Yep.
It's
I'm
10
not.
times.
I'm not convinced he's good. I do think the design is interesting, but
It's
I think
super fun.
it does irritate me the mismatch of flavor and
Yeah.
what he's doing. Yeah.
He's the one that I'm like probably will build first out of every
Okay.
investigator, just because I think he's very interesting, and I love Survivor gimmicky bullshit. So
Right.
Anyway, speaking
what-
of more Survivor gimmicky bullshit,
Yeah, and I don't think we've said this video, but if you missed our Rogue video, this is our second one, I think, at least the order we're recording them. Instead of talking about every card in the Drowned City like we've done with previous cycles, we have one of us for each class and neutral/specialist has chosen the 5 highlights we wanted to talk about. So
Yes.
we've got 5 cards that Kyle has chosen, so blame him.
Yeah.
If your favorite card wasn't talked about, only one person's fault.
Yep.
And
Mine.
anyway, with that said.
With that said, there's a ton of support for George in this box, but I figured instead of just like dwelling on everything for George, I try to like look at good cards or interesting cards as a whole. So I apologize if your favorite George card isn't in here. My favorite George card is in here.
Well, let's hear it.
So
this-
it's not this one.
Oh, well, all right.
I can pivot. No. So this is a really interesting skill called Contemplative. It's a 0 icon skill. Nothing for you.
Good start.
Tell you, these are highlights here. It's innate traded, and it says you may commit Contemplative to an investigation or a skill test during a parlay attempt at your location or connecting location. Very versatile. If the skill test is successful, the performing investigator discovers 1 clue at their location. Very simple card, but the fact that it's flexible inside of a, an aura, a radius of 1 location.
Oh, it's long shot for clues.
Yeah, it's long shot for clues, exactly. And I think honestly, like getting an investigation that you're pretty sure is gonna hit, or a parlay if you have an Alessandra friend.
You said parlay or investigation? Okay.
Yeah, so it's like a way to just double
Yeah.
clue or something like that. I think it's not in the most crazy interesting card, but I think it's one of the more powerful level 0 cards that came out in this box.
Yeah, I think it's worse than deduction, which he can take. So the question is, do you want like a 3rd and 4th deduction variant? Right? But
Why not?
he does want to play a lot of interesting skills.
Yeah.
Because he discards them and then uses them. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Anyway, that's that one. The next one is my favorite George card. It is Lawrence Carlyle, Sculpting His Dreams. It's an ally, artist, patron, 3-cost asset with an intellect icon. Passively gives you an intellect.
Nice.
Really strong already.
Great to have a red option for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another red option.
A red one. And then after a reaction, after you discard 1 or more cards from your hand during your turn, exhaust Lawrence Carlyle, gain 1 resource. 1 health and
Yeah.
sanity.
Yeah, I think no-brainer George card, right?
Yeah, like it doesn't belong in many other places. The only one I did think of, actually just now, was Patrice. I think also really likes this card.
That's true. She
Patrice-
discards one or more card most rounds.
Most rounds,
Wait,
yeah.
but it's during your turn. Doesn't she discard?
Oh, when does she discard her
a
hand?
upkeep? I think.
I think you're right.
You're right.
I mean, she plays cornered, but
That's good.
It does say during your turn.
Yeah, it
And
does.
this exhausts, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
Why would that have the during your turn limitation if it exhausts to do it?
I
Yeah.
think they
I would've-
specifically don't want it to work with upkeep, I guess.
I guess it's a little weird if it like synergizes with you having too large a hand, right? In general, like maybe less weird with George, but in general, that's kind of weird to have cards that are like, oh, we reward you for going over your max hand size.
Yeah.
Um,
But anyway, high int
yeah.
in Survivor, I feel like is very strong. Like maybe the strongest high int in any class, because they have so many tricks of like oh, you failed to investigate by 2, and just get 2 clues anyway. It's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. They put themselves in a lot of like win-win situations.
Yeah,
that way,
exactly.
It's also an interesting alternative to LeBranch for Dark Horse decks for like when you want to have resources some of the time but not others.
Yeah.
Like Dark Horse gives you +1 to all your stats. Cornered gives you essentially another +2 to all your stats. And then when you use Cornered, if you want a resource, you can take it. If you don't want it, you don't have to.
No, definitely true. And LeBranch is another one for even George that you might consider just for some extra draw when you're
Right.
getting if you just got shafted by your weakness.
Yep.
All right. Moving right along. Now we're to some experience. Maybe my favorite card in the red box. I mean, George is my favorite.
In the red box?
In the red box,
This
yeah.
box is like a teal, I think.
Yeah, you're wrong. This is Scarlet Keys, right?
Time has lost all meaning. So
Yeah.
Might as well be. Yeah.
So this is a new event and very different from what we've seen from Survivors. It's called Good Weather. It's a 2 experience, 1 cost event with a wild icon, myriad traded, fast traded, play after the investigation phase begins, group limit 1 play. 1 in play. So put Good Weather into play next to the agenda deck and choose a skill. When this card is in play, each investigator gets +2 to the chosen skill. Forced at the next start of the investigator phase, you discard this.
It feels like one of those dilemmas from a couple boxes ago, but you can choose when to play it.
Exactly, exactly. And it doesn't. Does the
Which is,
the
hey, quite a bit
dilemma
better.
had a downside?
Yeah, so there is a dilemma basically version of this
Yeah.
that this is much better than.
That one was like choose 2 skills and those are boosted and the others are
Yeah.
exactly.
debuffed.
And- But it was only boosted by 1. So I think
Right.
generally 1 skill by 2 is probably better than 2 skills by 1. No
Probably.
downside is nice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the biggest thing is probably just choosing when you play it.
Choose when you play it. It's 2 experience to get 3 copies of this. Like,
Yeah, it's one of those cards, and I have this gripe about the myriad keyword is that I love it when the cards are designed around it. When it's like this card feels like its design needs you to have a lot of copies of it, or even with like Doppelganger, it was less that and more that like flavor wise having a lot of them. Was super cool. This is an example of Myriad being on a card where it kind of seems super random and has nothing to do with anything.
I would totally agree
So
with that.
I don't really get it on the Myriad thing.
You can only play this card during the summer months.
Yeah, there we
Like,
go.
if the campaign is like, you can't bring this to Edge of the Earth. I'm
but
sorry.
What if you live in LA? Like, can you then play it in like spring and fall?
No, sorry. The
Like,
campaign summer. Like, it needs to be warm in Arkham in order to play this. You can't play it Edge of the Earth at all. Like, it just can't. Like, it's tabooed from Edge of the Earth.
What was this traded again? Is it a spell?
It's Blessed and Fortune traded.
What's? Oh, okay. So I was like, "What's happening here? Are you controlling the weather?" But no, it's just
No,
it's just you're
a,
lucky.
It's just a good day.
yeah, You're just having a nice time.
Yeah. Which I just love. I mean, like, the flavor of that is amazing. Right?
yeah. I gotta say, I actually like the flavor.
And in like a 3 or 4 player game, you know, you occasionally have like a enemy drought or something. You have like your investigate or your guardian with 3 intellect being like, I don't know, I guess I'll just like investigate. And you're like, well, if we're all gonna investigate this turn, just pop this out, give everyone an boost +2,
right.
and have a great old day in the sun.
Yeah. Great card. My only objection is the Myriad. They should have taken Myriad off of 4 cards in this box, had 1 less copy of those, so that you could have so that the Seeker research asset wasn't limit 1 per deck. Because there's also no reason for that. There's so much.
Yeah.
Lately, especially, I feel like there have been a lot
Random.
of cards that mess with the number of copies you can play for no discernible reason.
Yep.
I don't know.
Okay.
Next up.
Next up is Throwback. It is Last Chance.
Oh yeah, I like this one.
Last Chance. A great feeling on this card, even when it came out originally, which is like, you're looking at the revolver and you're like, I got 1 bullet left, better make it count. This copy of Last Chance still just has 1 bullet in the revolver. Hate to tell you. Maybe it's a silver bullet instead of a bronze bullet. I don't know. You have to look at the art. That's the first thing I could think of. It's 3 experience, skill, with 6 wild icons.
It's a lot of. That's
1 more than last time.
It's a good wild to experience ratio.
Yeah, I would say so. 2 wild per experience.
Yeah.
It's great. Commit only to a skill test with no other cards committed to it. It's a gambit. Other cards cannot be committed to the skill test, so same text as the original Last Chance. But the best part of this Last Chance, it loses 1 icon for each card in your hand. Great with George with being a low hand size. But If the skill test is successful while last chance is committed to it, draw 2 cards. That's
funny.
crazy.
While last chance is committed to it, is that
It's a Silas buff.
To play around Silas.
It's a Silas. Because if it wasn't, he would abuse this card.
It's a good example of the shit that they're looking forward to not having to do when they rotate. Right?
Yeah, totally. Man, Silas loves this card still, I think.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Silas loves Ellie Skill.
Yeah.
And I love Silas, so... I think this is just like one of the most solid George, and honestly any Survivor cards. I find that in Survivor, your experience just like, you're like, what the hell do I spend? I don't want to like change my deck comp too much. I want to make some cards better. I want to be able to find the good cards I have in there easier. This does exactly that. It's 3 experience, 2 cards in. For George, it's like you're discarding this card, tucking it under him, drawing another card, and then drawing 2 cards when you commit it. Like, just a really great card.
Yeah, I like this one a whole lot, and I like the play style that this encourages, which then it goes great with. Oh, I was gonna say Dark Horse, that's resources. It goes great with like Madame LeBranch and the other things that reward you for having a small hand size. But even on its own, it makes you like, okay, I want to take this big test last and play these cards first, and like I like how thoughtful that makes you be about sequencing and that kind of thing.
No, absolutely. No, I think it's a great one. All right, and speaking of experience and survivors, you got to talk about the most experienced card in the red box, as I like to say.
A rare red level 5 card, right?
Yep. Gift of Nodens is a 2-costed asset, 5 experience with just a single will icon, which is like really disappointing.
Very funny to put one skill on a level 5 card.
Yeah, and you're like, so when you draw this late, you can blame me because it's bad late draw. But if you don't draw it late, it's a ritual that is taking up the arcane slot, which I feel like that's probably negligible for a survivor. As a reaction, when you commit cards to a skill test you're performing, choose a survivor skill in your discard pile and discard 1 card from your hand. Commit the chosen skill to this test. After the skill test resolves, place that skill on the bottom of your deck. Limit once per round.
That's cool.
So cool.
It lets you discard any card in your hand to basically like duplicate a card that's in your discard. Like it's like the card in your hand was a copy of that in practice, right?
Exactly. And it puts it on the bottom of your deck. And again, I feel like George, once you maybe get through a majority of his deck and you have this out, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna like be whipping through these skills and getting my last chance firing every 5 turns for, as best I can.
Maybe so. I'm a little more skeptical that it going on the bottom of your deck matters, but I would rather do that than remove it from the game because for the reason you just said. It's like if you get to that point, that's fun.
Yeah, no, definitely.
The arcane slot does matter because Patrice probably would like this card a lot. She has a lot of stuff in her discard.
That's a good point. Yep. So it does compete with other cards for her.
Yeah. But you can rock without shriveling in Patrice for just this one time.
No, yeah, I think that this is super cool. It reminds me of a lot of that. Magic the Gathering has had a lot of designs over the years that are just like discard a card. It's like a creature that lets you discard a card for an effect that is clearly an existing classic Magic card. So it's like you functionally have a handful of that card now, and it kind of feels like that. It's like once you have frame like deduction in your discard pile, it's like any card is a deduction, which is great. Yeah,
feels really good.
Also, since you are discarding a card, it's better than if it was a copy of deduction that you were playing. Exactly. It's also triggering his ability.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So it's best in George, but still very good. I feel like in other survivors.
Mm-hmm. I wish that his flavor was he was a con man, because it feels like you're playing a shell game where you're like, okay, I'm taking this card from my hand, I'm putting it under me. Then I'm taking Resourceful, and I am putting it in the skill test and then under there. And then I'm taking another card because I played Resourceful, and I'm putting that in my hand. So it's totally
and then you're swapping 2 cards from your hand to under him.
Yeah.
And again, how much difference between a lawyer and a con man?
True, yeah.
No, I agree. This would be a great design for like a street huckster.
That's great. Well, that's all 5. I think the red was interesting, but a little underwhelming in overall. But some of these cards, really good.
Yeah, I think your enthusiasm sold me a little bit on George. Someone
Good.
I was not that enthusiastic for.
I'm
Yeah.
glad. Play George. He seems fun. Like, who wants to just, like, be good all the time?
also-
Don't you want your game to be devastated and you have to crawl back? You want to earn that victory.
But also, who wants to be a lawyer?
I mean,
All right.
There's a whole song about it in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Don't Be a Lawyer is the name of that song.
Is there?
Literally, it's a song called Don't Be a Lawyer.
I gotta finish that show. That show's so good.
It's so
I never
good.
watched all of it.
It's
Yeah.
so good. It's really hard to... It's, like, not a rewatch show, though, I will be honest. Because...
No?
You see a lot of growth from the lead throughout the 4 seasons of the show, and like
It's like frustrating to go
watching her like regress and, and just like not do well and make poor decisions is really tough.
I would definitely have thought this was a movie. I had no idea that there was
It's a TV show that is
It was on like the CW.
Yeah.
Is that even still a thing? I don't know. But it was wildly popular, specifically in California for whatever reason. I remember seeing that it was like it like won its time slot in California only. Yeah.
it's because they
it's
sing
also
about West Coast.
yeah, it's set in like East LA and relentlessly makes fun of like it's Southern California and
the Inland
LA,
Empire
yeah,
specifically.
yeah. It's great. Well, so now that we've bookended this video with TV show recommendations for you, we can sign off. Thank you guys for another fun conversation. Thank you for watching. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel. At Optimal Play, we don't have Patreon or anything. That's the only way that you can show support, so we appreciate it. And we will be back with you. It feels like we should do one of the classes you're doing. So Seeker? Did you take Seeker? What
yeah,
class
let's
are you?
do Seeker next.
All right, Seeker will be next. So we'll be back with
Yay.
that soon. Till then, be optimal.